For the first time in 15 years, Hollywood writers are on strike. What makes this strike very different from previous ones is that there are some newly powerful players in the mix that have quite different agendas from traditional media companies. Namely, it's these streamers. Even more specifically, it's these tech giants that have established a dominant presence in Hollywood.
These are our writers, and they're so important to our show.
We will not be working until we get a fair deal that we deserve.
This yawning wage gap between the top and the bottom.
The technology driven only by unchecked capitalism and with no attention to its human costs and moral implications is a threat to us all. It must be controlled. It cannot be left only to those who would always rather make a dollar than a good decision.
This is not just about you not being able to watch your favorite TV show for a while. This is about protecting the livelihood of laborers in an industry that makes some of the richest people on Earth. And this is also about standing up against tech giants that intrude into an industry and manipulate the industry to play by their rules because they have the money and power to do so. You may not know this, but on top of my day job in tech, I work in the film industry. Mainly as an actor, but sometimes I direct, I write, and I also crew. And I actually recently went on our national news to share some of my own experiences with the writers' strike so far. Last time the writers striked in 2007, it went on for 100 days, so a little over 3 months. Now, while the actual strike lasted 100 days, the repercussions of the strike could be felt for months after. Effectively, many shows were shut down for months, and some even years. Some shows were postponed, some stopped in the middle of season, and some just got outright canceled. Though I have to say, some shows got pretty creative without the writers.
Ladies and gentlemen, here we go!
Okay, so for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm gonna try to give you a quick rundown of the what, when, and the why of everything that's happening. So just, oh God, give me a second. Okay, I'm trying to do this walk and talk thing. I don't know how YouTubers do it so smoothly. Okay, so on May 1st of 2023, the WGA, which is the Writers Guild of America, consisting of almost 12,000 writers across America, they went on strike. The previous contract that they had with the producers expired on May 1st, and for a month and a half leading up to that expiry date, they've already been negotiating with the producers. Unfortunately, the new contract and the proposal terms that the writers gave to the producers have been heavily rejected, and the counter terms that the producers gave back were very far from what the writers are asking. So therefore, as a union, they decided that all the writers are not working until a deal is reached. By the way, these contracts expire every 3 years. So for the previous 15 years, the producers and the writers have actually reached an agreement every time before the writers could go on a full strike. So this makes this current strike and negotiation extremely monumental.
Union sisters and brothers and kin, take heart and draw strength from knowing that the Writers Guild of America does not walk alone. Stay strong.
Well, there are a lot of big things that the writers are negotiating for in this contract, but I would say the topic that has the most heated discussion is residuals. A residual is basically a paycheck that goes to the writer every single time their show is aired. So, for example, if a show like Friends continues to air and continues to earn a lot of money, a percentage of that money goes to the writer. And in traditional broadcasting TV, like cable networks, this paycheck has been heavily negotiated and discussed and bargained between two sides to make sure that both groups benefit from a show's success. So if a show like Friends goes on to become massively successful and earns a lot of money, then the writers are also able to get a piece of that, right? Which, makes sense because they help create the show and help make the show that successful. But unfortunately, this is not true for the streamers. Like companies like Apple and Amazon and Netflix, they don't follow this kind of residual structure, which is very typical of these tech giants that just go into industry and they're like, no, we don't need to follow the rules. Let's disrupt the industry. For the writers' residuals, the biggest difference between traditional broadcasting and new streaming media is that the streamers don't actually account for a show's success factor. Basically, if a show like Wednesday blows up, Netflix doesn't go to their writers and say, amazing job, Kayla. The episode you wrote brought in 50 million viewers. Here's 1% of what we earned as a reward. Instead, they say, amazing job, Kayla. The episode you wrote brought in 50 million viewers. Oh yeah, here's a $1,000 fee for letting us air it. Okay, let's be real. The conversation really probably goes like, what? No, we already talked about this. I said Jenna Ortega's left side of the face looks better than the right side of the face, so now we're gonna shoot everything from the left side from now. Can I help you? What? You want more money? What do you want more money for? We already paid you for writing the show. Gosh, these writers asking for more money. They think they made the show or something. Hi, it's Editing Cynthia here, and I just want to let you know that this is a gross simplification of what actually happens in terms of a pay. I keep saying percentages, but writers don't actually get paid in terms of percentages. It's not royalties, it's actually tiered. So it's actually a fixed pay according to the tiers of viewership or subscriber count or other factors that the production companies and writers use to calculate what percentage. I keep using that word, but it's not really a percentage. It's really fixed. It's fixed and then it's a percentage. And anyways, it's really complicated. I'm going to link more resources down below where you can actually look more into it. But I just wanted to let you know that it was a simplification. My example is just an example. Okay, back to regular programming. I think there's a big misunderstanding. Just because Hollywood is rich doesn't make the laborers within Hollywood just as rich. Because these people aren't treated as equally important as the top producers, even though these people literally make the show happen. Like what? It's like thinking Amazon delivery men are rich just because Amazon is rich. And that's why they've been fighting so hard to unionize. And we all know how Amazon responded to that.
We want to thank Jeff Bezos for going to space, because when he was up there, we were signing people up.
So the writers are negotiating for this success factor to be included in their next contract, on top of raising the fixed minimum pay that they get each time a show airs. Now, the hardest part about this fight is that unlike traditional broadcasting media, streamers don't actually release information about viewership. So I can go on the internet and I can look at TV ratings of different network series of 2021 to 2022. Like I can go on and I can see Grey's Anatomy on ABC has lost 1.74 million viewers. That's a lot of people, which is a decrease of 21%. I'm pretty sure this is because Grey's Anatomy is going to streamers and people are watching from there instead of actually on the television network. But you know, like what I mean to say is that you have access to these metrics. However, with streamers, it's not the same. You have access to cable network metrics because these companies allow a third-party system like the Nielsen system to go in and actually track these metrics and then publicly release them. However, when it comes to streamers, this information is hidden in a very complex black box and we have no idea what's inside. We don't know who's watching what on Netflix at a certain period of time. Sure, we can go on Netflix and see like Netflix top 10 most watched, but that's it. There is no other information. We don't actually know who's watching season 2 of Stranger Things episode 5 in 2023. We don't have access to that information. This is mostly because streamers are global. They cater to a global audience. And something like the Nielsen system, which is a third-party service, they can only track viewership in America. Not to mention, Nielsen can only track viewership through a television set, which, as you know, many people are watching Netflix, Amazon, Apple TV on their other devices. So the only way for us to have access to this information is if the companies release them. And as you probably predicted, none of these streamers are transparent about this information. Whenever confronted about this, they always avoided the conversation or just said something like, it's way too complicated to calculate a number. It's like, you have to look at the viewers and the subscribers and how often they watch the shows and what they're, yeah, it's too complicated. So right now, the only way for the writers to create a pay structure that follows a potential audience size is to look at the total subscriber count of this streaming service.
It sits on the platform for a year and you get one check no matter how many times it's watched.
If you write a show for Hulu, you get paid to write it, and you might see $400 for the next 3 years, as opposed to a network rerun, which might be, for an hour show, might be $24,000.
In streaming, show budgets have increased by 50% over the past decade, but the average writer-producer's weekly income has dropped by 4% over the same time period. And when you factor in inflation, weekly income has dropped 23% in the last 10 years. It was a choice the companies made, to pay us less and to make our work more precarious, even as the product we make for them generates more value for them than ever.
In one clause of the contract, the writers raised concerns about the use of AI in writing or rewriting materials, and specifically asked to discuss the terms of regulation around the use of AI. And what did the producers say? They just outright rejected the proposal. Like, the proposal to discuss about AI. Like, they don't even want to discuss about AI. I talked pretty extensively about AI in my last video, so I'm not against adopting AI. But like I mentioned in that video, AI will never be able to replace the creative intuition of a human being. And any adoption of AI in terms of strategy and how to manage that should always happen while the creatives are there to discuss with them, and should not be a decision that is made just by corporate executives who only care about profit. The funniest part is that as a counter proposal, they suggested to have an annual meeting to discuss advancements in technology. Like, what the heck does that even mean? AI is not a big deal. Not a big deal. There's nothing to regulate. Nothing at all. It's not a big deal. Like, you don't need to worry about it. Okay, fine. If you're really that concerned about it, we can have a meeting, like, every year to talk about technology. You know, I think have a meeting every 365 days to talk about how far we've come as a society in terms of technology and advancements. I think that will calm you down. Because it's not a big deal.
So there have been some interesting advances in technology this year. Yeah, AI's getting really good. Okay, see you next year.
Let's zoom out a bit. I've been covering the nitty-gritty details of the writer's strike and what the writers want and all that, but like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, this is bigger than just the writers, and I think bigger than just Hollywood. From what I can gather, this current strike is very complex because the producers themselves may actually be quite divided in their own agendas, and that's because there are different groups who have different things to gain from this negotiation. This is the AMPTP, the trade association that contains all these companies. We have the traditional broadcasting networks like NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, and other smaller channels like the Cartoon Network, CW, and Discovery Channel, amongst many other broadcasting channels. And then we have the major motion picture studios. That includes companies like Paramount, Disney, Warner Brothers, Sony, Universal, MGM, Lionsgate, and then smaller studios like A24. And then we have the tech giants, Apple, Amazon, and Netflix. So the traditional broadcasting companies cannot afford to let the writers continue to strike. In a landscape where traditional broadcasting is already losing, they're only losing more money by allowing the writers to continue to strike. However, the tech giants don't care. That's because streaming media services can still supply their audiences with content, unlike TV networks that need to air new episodes. Not to mention, these tech companies have a lot more cash to burn than the broadcasters, And instead of allowing writers to gain more money in the long run, they have the money and power to sit this out in hopes of getting a more favorable deal out of the strike. So this puts these two groups at odds with each other. Now, what makes this whole thing extremely complicated is that many of these broadcasting networks are also owned by companies now in the news streaming business. I mean, just look at this. Disney, the company, owns ABC, which is a television network, but it also owns Disney Plus, which is a streaming service, and Hulu, which is another streaming service. Warner Brothers has a list of networks under them: the Cartoon Network, the Discovery Channel, the CW, but also HBO, which is a streaming service. Paramount, the company, owns CBS, part of CW, but it also owns Paramount Plus, the streaming service. Comcast, which owns NBC, television network, Universal Pictures, movie studio, but it also owns Peacock, which is a streaming service. And then obviously you have the tech companies who offer streaming services only: Netflix, Amazon, and Apple. All these other studios are just doing major movie pictures. And then Fox. Look at this mess. So far, the producers have a united front against the writers, and that's because they're negotiating as a collective. And also there are terms within the proposal that they unanimously disagree on. However, as the strike continues to unfold and some of these terms get mended, it is likely that we will begin to see a divide between old and new media. Those who cannot afford to continue the standoff will freak out about losing more money, and maybe that will put pressure on other companies like the tech giants to back down. However, I really don't know if that will be the case. From what we can see from the past behavior of these tech companies breaking into industry, they are willing to shell out a lot of money just to get more market share, even if that means they don't make any money at all. I mean, this is not the first time that these companies have done this. Like, if we just look at Amazon, which, by the way, is worth all of these traditional media companies combined times 3. In 2017, Amazon entered the grocery market by acquiring Whole Foods for $13.7 billion, which is 10 times more money than they have ever shelled out for any deal, by the way. So they paid that much money to get into the grocery market, and it's been, 6 years since, and it hasn't really grown that much. They are still only 2% of the total market of the grocery business, and their earnings have actually dropped. But this is nothing new for Amazon. We know that a bunch of Amazon subsidiary businesses don't actually make any money, but they're okay with doing that just to expand control over a certain market. And obviously they have the cash to burn, and people out there have turned this as Amazon's expensive hobby. If we look at it all like this is no longer just about writers striking against exploitation. It is now about these tech giants taking more control of their media market.
This is the thing about modern tech companies. They don't really care about making money, at least about making money right now. These disruptive companies with so much potential take the long view. Think about Amazon. They lost money for years, but in the process, they got consumers addicted to them. And they've also eliminated much of their competition.
We've seen the consolidation of companies. Now we're down to 6. Probably go down to 4 as these tech companies gobble up these other companies. Less places to get hired, less places to sell your work, and that reduces competition and then reduces salaries.
Wait, one last thing about the strike, I promise. Actually, so the writers aren't the only ones potentially striking, or they are striking right now, but there are other unions potentially striking because they are also up for negotiations, namely the directors and the actors. That's me. But the Actors Union has not started negotiations yet as of me recording. However, with the pamphlet that they literally just released last week, it seems like they're very, very, very ready to strike alongside the writers. Yeah, strike! Yeah, it's like literally in the letter that the president wrote to all of the actors in the union says, we need you to vote yes to authorize a strike if push comes to shove. Oh, okay, I get it. Basically, the worst case scenario for the producers is that all the writers, the directors, and the actors all strike at the same time. And if that actually happens, it will literally throw Hollywood into a period of dark ages of nothingness. Well, more like the golden ages of reality TV, which is basically still dark ages for us. Hi, it's Editing Cynthia again, and I am a month into the future. I know I've been editing this for a long time, I'm sorry. But there are some updates, so I just want to give them to you. First of all, the Directors Guild have actually reached a tentative agreement with the AMPTP, which means that they will not be striking. Second of all, the actors are currently in negotiation with the AMPTP, but they have already went through a strike authorization vote, and out of the 46% of members that participated, 97% of them said yes to striking. So both the directors and the actors' contract expire June 30th, which means we will find out how this whole situation will unfold in a couple of weeks. Okay, but I don't want you to take this as an excuse to complain about your favorite shows not being written or not being aired. Yeah, everyone is fighting so hard to be properly treated and compensated so that you can keep watching the shows that you love. Yeah, and that's what makes this current writer's strike extremely crucial, because they are the first to renegotiate their contract, and whatever they set as an example paves way for the rest of the labor unions to follow. And only when all of the unions come together and put pressure on the production studios will they then start to feel the value of the laborers of this billion-dollar market. So I don't really know what's going to happen in the next few months or even years, but what I do know is it's important for you as an individual audience member who will be impacted by this to know what's really going on.
For writers time and time again. Strikes got us our residuals. Strikes got us our pension and health funds. If writers had not demanded these things, there would not be these things.
We are not diminished by the size of the company that employs us. That what we want is not just a gig, not just a job, but a career with a future and with promise. And that first among those promises is that if you do good work, you can make a life out of doing that thing.